If you're into Game Boy, there's a good chance you'll like my new Neo Geo Pocket Color series too. Every Thursday I'm reviewing a new Neo Geo game. Just join the PO3 Patreon or become a channel member here on YouTube. Sticking out from the rest of the library in almost every way is one of the few first-person shooter games on the system. A Japanese exclusive, anglicized as Ekuzu, based on how a Japanese speaker would pronounce the letter, you control this tank called the Vixiv, navigating a 3D, vector-constructed landscape. Looking at it through today's eyes is a strange experience, as we've had well over 2 decades to grow used to ever more realistic and impressive worlds. But in the early 90s, and on the Game Boy no less, this was a really big deal. Basically, these aliens have invaded your homeland and you've got to wipe them out, that kind of thing. You also need to collect these nuclear crystal things along the way that provide your people with energy. You're not in just any old tank, however. This is a flying tank. Pushing forward increases your speed, back slows you down, and eventually puts you into reverse. If you have enough velocity, it's possible to launch yourself off these ramps and into the air. You don't take damage when you come back down, the tank just sort of lands itself uncomfortably. At the bottom of your screen there's a fuel gauge. This is depleted only when you're in the air, and your altitude when flying is shown on the left. Pressing A fires a pair of lasers at whatever's bang in front of you, and it's unlimited. B will fire any alternate weapons you may come across. You find them at what look like radar stations. Essentially, the aim of each mission is to collect a crystal or destroy something. Your commander will tell you specifically what at the start of each stage, while simultaneously defeating alien vehicles at the same time. Pressing start brings up your map screen. This will show your targets on any given stage. Enemies can also be seen on your radar at the bottom of the normal screen. These will shoot at you as well, with your health bar being the gauge on the right of the view screen. They're only present at ground level though, it seems. It's possible occasionally to find these tunnels that you can go down into. It's not so easy to control the tank in the tunnels. Hitting the walls takes off your health, and I blew up a few times in there. As well as the ramps and enemies, there are very rough approximations of trees, pyramids and things around the landscape, but largely there's little to be seen. Movement is indicated and the impression facilitated by these dots on the ground, and while that might not sound particularly impressive, I implore you to at least try the ROM just so you can drive around for a while. Special recognition must be given to the soundtrack, which is absolutely phenomenal. The music is super atmospheric and the explosions, bullet fire and sirens are incredible. Even the voice of the robot head that gives you instructions is approximated in an effective way. Being released only in Japanese presents an obvious problem. There's a lot of text in this game, and unfortunately you rely on it greatly. This isn't necessarily the sort of thing that you can just puzzle out as you go along, at least I can't anyway. The vectorized head thing chats a whole lot, interrupting you at various intervals to tell you something that I assume is pertinent to whatever mission you're on. There was a Western sequel released, Xscape, which came out in 2010 on the DSiWare. The game was to be released in the US as Lunar Chase, but for some reason was cancelled due to the high level of difficulty for what was perceived to be a kid's console. Inaccessible as it might be to you at this moment in time, the skill that went into creating X is justification enough for what it gets. As for the English language version called Lunar Chase, in 2020 a completed ROM file was actually leaked. I'm not going to tell you how to find it, but if you have the capacity, I would strongly recommend that you check it out. This game was such an important part of video game history, paving the way for legendary titles such as Star Fox and the 3D world of games that came after. It's a fascinating part of video game history that I can't really go into fully here because of the scope of this channel. It's something that deserves much more of an in-depth analysis. It all started in 1990 with a tech demo called Eclipse that was made by a then 17-year-old British guy called Dylan Cuthbert, hired by Argonaut Games to specifically work on Game Boy products. And it was that essentially showed Nintendo that 3D of this kind of level could be achieved on their consoles. Nothing before then had really even been attempted, not even on the NES. The game engine that was built with Eclipse would eventually become the game we better know as X/Lunar Chase, But not only that, it would essentially inspire things like Star Fox on the SNES. Like I say, I can't really go into much more detail in what is essentially a short-form channel, so if you want to know more on this story, and I fully recommend that you do look it up, I've put a link in the description to a video on the YouTube channel The Video Game History Foundation. It's a brilliant 25-minute documentary that'll tell you all about it.